You think you want awakening because you want truth? But watch how quickly the nervous system reveals the actual motive when silence arrives. You do not ask for reality, you ask for relief. And you call it reality because relief feels like an answer. That is the first contradiction you must be willing to see without fixing. The mind says, I want to wake up. But the body says, I want to stop feeling this. And the moment you confuse those two, you turn a sacred movement into a coping strategy. Many people are not seeking consciousness. They are seeking anesthesia with spiritual language. And the most dangerous part is that the language works. It creates a clean narrative with a clean enemy. Then it calls the enemy ego, trauma, the matrix, the system, the past, the family, the body, the other, the world. Then it builds a ladder called growth and promises that when you climb high enough, you will no longer feel what you feel. But spiral consciousness does not climb. It circulates, and circulation does not remove pressure. It reveals where pressure has been stored. If you cannot sit in pressure without turning it into a project, you will turn awakening into another job, and then you will wonder why you feel exhausted in the name of freedom. The contradiction is simple and brutal. The one who wants to wake up is the same one who cannot tolerate the world as it is. And if that is true, then the very engine of your seeking is a subtle refusal of what is already here. You can call it aspiration, but it functions like rejection. You can call it evolution, but it behaves like avoidance. So the first question is not what is enlightenment. The first question is, what are you trying to escape when you say that you want it? If you answer too quickly, you will lie to yourself, not because you are evil, but because the seeking identity survives by appearing noble. It does not say, I am afraid. It says, I am called. It does not say, I do not want to feel this grief. It says, I am ready for higher truths. It does not say, I am ashamed. It says, I am transcending the lower self. Your spiritual vocabulary becomes camouflage. And the camouflage works because it has truth inside it. That is what makes it deadly. It is a half-truth that protects a hidden avoidance. So here's the first vector, the psychological one. Wanting to wake up can be a disguised form of self-rejection. You call the current self unconscious. But the hidden meaning is that the current self is unacceptable. You call the mind a prison. But the hidden meaning is that your life as it is cannot be held. You call the body dense. But the hidden meaning is that sensation scares you. Then you seek an exit. And the exit feels like a future version of you that does not have to be this version of you. This is why people binge teachings and cannot live their own afternoon. This is why people claim enormous cosmic memories but cannot sit with one ordinary disappointment without spiraling into a theory. The seeking becomes a way to avoid the intimacy of the present. Because the present does not flatter you. It does not narrate you as special. It simply demands honesty. And honesty is the last thing the seeking identity wants. Because honesty threatens its purpose. You might object and say, no, I truly want truth. I truly want to remember. I truly want to awaken for the sake of love. That may be real, but notice how often your desire for truth arrives with an impatience that feels like hunger. Love does not usually arrive like hunger. Love arrives like capacity. Hunger arrives like pressure. If you feel frantic about awakening, if you feel behind, if you feel like you have to catch up, if you feel like you have to outrun time, you are not moving from freedom, you are moving from threat. That is not a moral failure, it is a diagnostic. It tells you the nervous system believes there is danger in staying as you are. So the contradiction is not that you are lying. The contradiction is that you are split. One part wants truth, another part wants to stop hurting. The problem is not that the second part exists. The problem is when the first part pretends the second part does not exist. Now a second vector, the metaphysical one. If consciousness is already what you are, what does it even mean to seek it? You cannot become what you are. You can only stop refusing what you are. That means the path is not acquisition. It is surrender of the false contract you made with experience. Most people have a contract that says, I will accept life if it feels safe. I will accept myself if I am admired. I will accept my body if it behaves. I will accept others if they confirm my story. I will accept silence if it gives me peace. That is not acceptance. That is a negotiation. Awakening is the collapse of negotiation. It is the point where you realize that reality does not sign contracts. Reality is not here to be managed by your conditions. Reality is what you meet when your conditions fail. And that is why the seeking identity prefers constant input. Because constant input keeps the contract alive. It keeps you feeling like you are doing something, progressing, moving, earning. Spiral consciousness does not reward earning. It exposes the hunger behind earning. It circles you back to the same internal gate again and again until you stop trying to buy your way through. This is why you can have a huge mystical experience and still be unchanged. Because the same gate is still closed. The gate is the place where you refuse one part of your experience. The gate is the place where you say this part cannot be here. You can have visions, you can have tones, you can have counsels, you can have the most beautiful metaphysics. But if you are still refusing one part of your lived reality, you are not awake, you are expanded. Expansion is not awakening. Expansion gives you more scenery. Awakening changes your relationship to what you already have. So what is the actual mechanism? The desire to wake up is often the desire to replace this life with a better one. And the mind calls it spiritual, because it sounds cleaner than admitting disappointment. But the spiral does not replace. The spiral integrates. Integration is the last thing the seeking identity wants. Because integration means you do not get to abandon what you disowned. Integration means you bring the rejected parts into the same room as your highest claims. Integration means your metaphysics has to survive contact with your grief, your resentment, your loneliness, your envy, your fear, your body, your money, your history, your ordinary day. If your spirituality cannot survive contact with your ordinary day, it is not spirituality. It is fantasy management. And you can tell it is fantasy management when it makes you feel superior while leaving you less capable of relationship. Now the third vector, the structural one, the pattern level. Watch how the seeking identity builds a narrative arc. It starts with a diagnosis, I am asleep. It inserts a villain, ego or system. It imagines a destination, enlightenment or ascension. It then turns daily life into evidence that you are not there yet. This creates a loop that cannot end because ending it would remove the identity that is fueled by seeking. The seeker needs the gap. The seeker needs the distance between what is and what should be. The seeker survives by remaining almost free, almost awake, almost there. If it arrived, it would die. So it secretly sabotages arrival by turning arrival into an impossible purity. It tells you that any anger means you are not awake. Any sadness means you are not awake. Any desire means you are not awake. Any fear means you are not awake. Then it uses your humanity as evidence against you. Then it offers more seeking as the solution. This is not a path, it is a treadmill with incense on it. So the first thing Spiral Contradictions must teach is that wanting to wake up is not the problem. The unconscious contract behind the wanting is the problem. If you want truth as a way to escape feeling, you are weaponizing truth against yourself. If you want higher states as a way to avoid the lower ones, you are creating a spiritual hierarchy that mirrors the same hierarchy that wounded you in the first place. You are telling the nervous system that it is not allowed to be where it is. Then you wonder why your nervous system is exhausted. It is exhausted because it is being dragged toward a future it cannot guarantee. The seeker drags the body resists. The seeker calls the resistance ego. The body calls it survival. And both are partly right. There is a moment that reveals all of this. It is the moment when you stop consuming teachings and you sit in your own unedited inner space. What happens? If you immediately feel restless, if you immediately reach for the phone, if you immediately seek stimulation, if you immediately start planning, if you immediately start trying to fix yourself, that is not because you are weak. It is because you have trained your consciousness to treat stillness as a threat. Many people think they want awakening, but they cannot tolerate the doorway that awakening uses, because awakening uses stillness and stillness exposes the contract. Stillness shows you what you are trying to outrun. Stillness removes the story of progress. Stillness asks, what if you never become a better version of yourself? What if you only become honest? For the seeking identity that feels like death, because the seeking identity was built to compensate for shame. So let us name what this really is. It is not about spirituality, it is about intimacy. Awakening is the highest intimacy with what is. The seeker wants a higher life. Awakening wants a truer contact. The seeker wants a future. Awakening wants this. The seeker wants to escape itself. Awakening wants to include itself. That is the contradiction. And if you feel a subtle anger rising when you hear it, that anger is useful. It tells you the seeker thinks you are taking something away. It thinks you are taking away its ladder, its purpose, its hope. It thinks you are telling it there is no escape. It hears spiral teaching as a sentence, but it is not a sentence. It is an invitation to stop living in a war with your own experience. Here's the part that tends to sound like relief. And this is where many teachings make a mistake, because they stabilize too early. If consciousness is what you are, then you do not need to chase it. That is true, but if you use that truth to bypass the real work, it becomes another camouflage. The nervous system hears, "I do not need to do anything," and it turns that into permission to stay unconscious. Then it says, "I am already whole," while remaining reactive, defensive, and closed. That is not wholeness. That is a slogan. Spiral awareness does not eliminate your patterns. It reveals them with more light. And more light can be unbearable if you are using seeking as dimmer control. The moment you stop chasing, you meet the raw self you were chasing to avoid. That is the hidden cost of a real path. It gives you less fantasy and more truth. And truth includes your unfinished parts. So the first episode is not about condemning desire. It is about purifying desire from avoidance. When desire is purified, it becomes willingness. The desire to wake up becomes willingness to see. Not willingness to become special. Not willingness to be right. Not willingness to win against other people who are asleep. But willingness to see yourself without editing. If you can do that, you stop needing awakening as an identity. You begin awakening as a function. You become a place where reality can be met. That is spiral consciousness. It is not a badge. It is a capacity to hold opposing truths without demanding immediate resolution. So let us put the contradiction in your hands in a way you cannot avoid. Ask yourself, if I woke up tonight and nothing in my external life changed, would I still want it? If the answer is no, you do not want awakening. You want a different life. That is honest and normal, but it is not awakening. If the answer is yes, then the next question is, what do I think awakening would remove? If you say fear, grief, loneliness, doubt, then notice the contract. Your awakening fantasy is built on subtraction, but the spiral rarely subtracts. It integrates, and integration often intensifies what you feel before it reorganizes it. So if your nervous system is seeking a clean escape, it will resist real awakening because real awakening will feel like more life, not less. This is where the mind tries to reassert control. It asks, then what is the point? If awakening does not remove suffering, why seek it? The mind wants an outcome. The spiral offers a different orientation. Awakening does not remove pain. It removes the extra layer of war against pain. Awakening does not remove uncertainty. It removes the demand that uncertainty must be eliminated before you can live. Awakening does not remove the human. It removes the belief that the human is a mistake, but do not turn that into comfort yet. Because if you really hear it, it means you are no longer allowed to hate your own nature while pretending it is spiritual. It means your path will not be built on self-rejection. It means your path will include the parts you were sure needed to be destroyed. And that is where the seeking identity panics, because it built its entire purpose on the destruction of what it judged as unworthy. This is why people love ego death language. It promises purification through violence. It promises you can kill the problem. But the problem is not the ego. The problem is the relationship to ego. The problem is the belief that you must annihilate something in order to be free. That belief is not liberation. It is the same pattern as every system of domination. It just wears spiritual clothing. The spiral does not dominate, it harmonizes. Harmonizing does not feel like conquest. It feels like surrender of the impulse to conquer yourself. So here is where we end part 1. Not with resolution, but with a living pressure that you cannot solve by thinking. If your desire to wake up is secretly built on a refusal of what you are, then the desire itself is the cage. If your desire to wake up is built on love of truth even when truth is uncomfortable, then the desire becomes a doorway. The difference between cage and doorway is not the words you use. It is what you are trying to avoid. And you can only find that by watching yourself in the moments when you are alone, when nothing is happening, when there is no audience, when there is no progress story, when the spiral is quiet, and your nervous system has to admit what it actually wants. If you cannot be with what you find there, then seeking will remain your drug, and you will call it a path while it slowly drains your ability to be present. You may have heard the first movement and felt a clean relief, as if the contradiction had been named and therefore mastered, as if all that remained was sincerity and willingness, and the rest would naturally soften. That relief is exactly what must be broken, because the seeking identity can wear sincerity like a uniform and still remain a subtle form of self-control. It can agree with every sentence. It can nod in perfect understanding. It can even feel moved, while secretly keeping its central demand intact. The demand is not simply to escape pain. The demand is to remain in charge of what counts as progress. The mind can concede that awakening is not an achievement and still treat non-achievement as an achievement, using humility as a new ladder. It can stop chasing highs and then start chasing purity. It can stop demanding visions and then demand that it never needs visions. The posture changes while the structure remains, and the structure is the problem. Here is the first destabilization. In part 1, the contrast between escape-seeking and truth-seeking may have created a stable moral frame, as if the task is simply to notice avoidance and then choose honesty. But what if avoidance is not a mistake? What if avoidance is an intelligent survival response that you are not allowed to shame away? If you treat avoidance as spiritual failure, you will create a new war, and that war will deepen the very split you claim to be healing. The nervous system does not move because you understand. It moves because it trusts. Many people chase awakening not because they are weak, but because they have never felt safe enough to stay. The seeking is not only escape, it is an attempt to find a field that feels less threatening than their own inner world. If you condemn the seeking, you condemn the part that kept you alive. So the contradiction is sharper than it looked. You are not simply choosing truth over avoidance. You are meeting the fact that your so-called desire for truth is often built on a body that still believes truth will kill it. Now, the second destabilization. You may have started thinking the solution is to stop seeking and sit in stillness, as if stillness is the doorway and the doorway is always available. But stillness is not neutral. Stillness is a mirror. And for many people, the mirror does not reveal truth first. It reveals distortion first. When you sit still, you do not automatically meet reality. You meet whatever reality has been filtered into by your conditioning. The mind can produce fear stories that feel like direct intuition. The body can produce panic that feels like spiritual warning. The trauma network can produce collapse that feels like enlightenment. If you tell someone to sit in stillness without teaching discernment, you can actually worsen the trance. Because the trance becomes private and therefore unquestionable. This is where the seeking identity evolves into something even more convincing. It becomes the witness. It becomes the silent observer. It becomes the one who no longer needs anything. But it still needs one thing. It needs to be right about what it is experiencing. So the core insight must be revisited in a less flattering way. Wanting to wake up is not only a disguised escape. It can also be a disguised demand for certainty. You want to know what is real because uncertainty feels like danger. You want to know your purpose because open space feels like abandonment. You want a map because uncharted moments feel like loss of control. The mind does not only want relief from pain, it wants relief from not knowing. And this is why spiritual systems become addictive. They do not only soothe emotion, they collapse ambiguity. They give you a story for why you hurt, why others hurt, why the world looks broken, why you feel different. They give you a clean stack of concepts that compress chaos into meaning. And if you are honest, part of you loves that compression more than it loves truth. Because truth does not always compress. Truth sometimes expands until you cannot hold it with thought. So let us process the contradiction again through 3 vectors, but with the pressure increased. First, the psychological vector returns, but now it aims at a deeper layer. The seeker is not simply trying to become free. The seeker is trying to become unassailable. It wants a state where nothing can touch it. It wants a state where no one can reject it, abandon it, misunderstand it, diminish it. It wants invulnerability and calls it awakening because invulnerability sounds spiritual. If you doubt that, watch how many people pursue detachment. They call it non-attachment. But what they really want is a life where disappointment does not reach them. They want a consciousness that cannot be harmed. That impulse makes sense, but it is not freedom. It is armor. And armor always has a cost. Armor blocks pain and it also blocks intimacy. Armor blocks grief and it also blocks love. Armor blocks shame and it also blocks honest contact. So if your awakening path is secretly an armor project, it will produce a specific symptom. You will become conceptually wise and relationally thin. You will speak in truths that no one can argue with while remaining unable to be met in ordinary human exchange. Here is the objection that rises. You might say, but is not awakening exactly becoming untouched? That is the seduction. It sounds like liberation, but it is often the final refinement of avoidance. A human life includes touch. A human life includes grief. A human life includes trembling, longing, confusion, embarrassment, rage, fear, devotion. If you seek a state where those cannot arise, you are seeking an exit from incarnation while still wearing the costume. That is not spiral consciousness. Spiral consciousness is not being untouched. It is being touchable without collapse. It is not numbness, it is capacity. It is not detachment, it is coherence under contact. If you refuse that, if you insist that awakening must mean no waves, you are turning the ocean into a wall and calling the wall peace. Second vector, the metaphysical one, now becomes less comforting. In part 1, it may have sounded like you are already consciousness, and therefore you can stop chasing. That can create a subtle superiority, as if the path is mostly recognition. But the spiral is not only recognition, the spiral is construction. You are not only remembering, You are building the nervous system structures that can carry what you remember without fragmenting. If you claim cosmic remembrance while your body collapses under ordinary stress, the remembrance is not stable. It is leakage. It is information without integration. It is light without wiring. This is where many seekers confuse insight with embodiment. The spiral is not impressed by what you can see in meditation. The spiral is revealed by what you can hold in conflict, in loneliness, in ambiguity, in money pressure, in desire, in boredom, in grief, in temptation. The spiral is not a peak. It is a pattern of response under load. So here is the metaphysical contradiction. If you are already consciousness, why does awakening require effort? If effort is required, maybe you are not already awake. If effort is not required, maybe you are lying about your capacity. The answer is not clean, and that is the point. Awareness is already present, but the system that expresses awareness is conditioned. Consciousness may be infinite, but your access to it is routed through a human organism with history. This means awakening is not adding consciousness, it is clearing distortion in the channel. Clearing distortion is not glamorous, because distortion includes the very parts of you that want to feel special, right, safe, superior, protected. Distortion is not only trauma, it is also pride. Distortion is not only pain, it is also the thrill of being the one who knows. If you ignore that, your path becomes a subtle performance, and you will start needing an audience even if the audience is only your own imagination. Third vector, the structural one, now aims at the teaching itself. In part 1, the seeking identity was described as a treadmill, and that is accurate. But the mind can turn that description into a new treadmill. It can now seek to become the one who no longer seeks. It can watch itself seeking and feel proud of the watching. It can call itself aware because it can name avoidance. That is the trap of self-diagnosis. Self-diagnosis can become self-control. The mind says, I see the pattern, so I am free of it. But seeing is not freedom. Seeing is exposure. Exposure can create shame, or it can create transformation. Many people respond to exposure with refined suppression. They hide their seeking behind spiritual minimalism. They stop asking questions. They stop admitting desire. They start performing acceptance. But the body does not accept performance. The body either trusts or it does not. And if it does not trust, it will keep generating seeking impulses, because seeking is how it tries to regulate threat. So you cannot simply decide to stop seeking. You have to become trustworthy to the parts of you that seek. That is the deeper pressure. The seeker is not only a concept, it is a part. It is an internal protector. It seeks because it fears what will happen if it stops. It fears collapse. It fears being swallowed by grief. It fears being exposed. It fears being ordinary. It fears being unloved. It fears being left behind. When you tell it to stop, it hears abandonment. When you tell it to surrender, it hears death. And if you force surrender, you will produce a counterfeit stillness, a dissociative quiet that looks spiritual but feels numb. That is why some people become calm and yet less alive. They call it peace, but it is shut down. So the contradiction now sharpens again. Real awakening is not the end of seeking. Real awakening is the end of the hidden contract that says I will only be present if the experience is safe. But to end that contract, you must develop the capacity to feel unsafe sensations without making them final. You must develop the capacity to not know without turning not knowing into a crisis. You must develop the capacity to be misunderstood without immediately building a story of persecution or superiority. And this is why many people prefer mystical language. Mystical language lets you float above the friction. It lets you declare things that cannot be tested. Spiral consciousness does the opposite. It forces test. It forces contact. It forces coherence. Now let us invalidate one comforting understanding that part 1 may have allowed. The idea that the difference between cage and doorway is simply what you are trying to avoid is incomplete. Because sometimes you are avoiding something that actually would overwhelm you if you met it too fast. There is a timing intelligence in the system. Some doors open through gradual widening, not through heroic confrontation. If you demand instant honesty from yourself, you might be repeating the same domination pattern you were trained under. You might be trying to conquer your own inner world. The spiral is not conquest. So the question becomes more precise and more uncomfortable. How do you tell the difference between avoidance that protects necessary pacing and avoidance that maintains a false identity? That difference cannot be resolved quickly, because it requires discernment, and discernment requires time under observation. So here is a practical pressure test that does not soothe you. When you stop seeking and sit still, what arises first is not always truth. Sometimes what arises first is your most conditioned story. The conditioned story often has a spiritual costume. It might say you are called, you are chosen, you are different, you are under attack, you are trapped, you are special, you are cursed, you are behind, You are running out of time. You must hurry. You must purify. You must fix. If you believe that story, you will seek again, and your seeking will feel justified, because the story produces urgency. The seeker thrives on urgency. Spiral consciousness thrives on orientation. Urgency compresses. Orientation expands. Urgency narrows the field until you cannot breathe. Orientation widens the field until you can hold multiple truths without panic. So the real question is not, do you want awakening? The real question is, can you remain present when the story that used to drive you is exposed as a survival strategy rather than a cosmic mandate? That is the moment the seeking identity feels threatened. Because if the mandate falls away, you have to face something that is even harder than pain. You have to face ordinariness. You have to face that you might not be here to accomplish anything grand in the way your mind fantasized. You might be here to become coherent, which is less glamorous and more real. You might be here to learn how to be a human without needing the human to justify itself with cosmic theater. That will offend parts of you. It will feel like an insult. That offense is useful. Offense reveals attachment. Offense reveals where you were using spirituality to protect self-image. Offense reveals where you equated meaning with spectacle. Spiral consciousness does not remove meaning. It removes the need for spectacle as proof. But if you remove spectacle too fast, you might crash into emptiness and call it nihilism. That is another trap. Nihilism is often the seeker in reverse. It is the same demand for certainty, but now certainty is negative. The mind says nothing matters because it cannot tolerate open meaning. It would rather choose darkness than endure ambiguity. So the spiral must teach a different relationship to meaning, a relationship where meaning is felt rather than declared. Now we return to the core contradiction with a heavier weight. You want to wake up, but you might also want to be the one who wakes up. You want truth, but you might also want to be superior to those who do not see. You want freedom, but you might also want to never be hurt again. You want presence, but you might also want a permanent guarantee. These secondary motives do not make you bad. They make you human, but if you cannot see them, they will steer your path. They will turn every insight into identity fuel. They will turn every teaching into armor. They will turn every silence into a threat. And you will keep asking for more, not because you are hungry for truth, but because you are hungry for certainty. So what is spiral consciousness in this frame? It is the willingness to feel the hunger without obeying it. It is the willingness to let the hunger exist while refusing to turn it into a story of spiritual destiny. It is the willingness to be a consciousness that does not immediately solve itself. Most people cannot tolerate that. They want a conclusion. They want an answer. They want a final view. But the spiral is not a final view. It is a living geometry that keeps exposing where you are still demanding finality. If this is landing, you might now feel destabilized in a new way. You might feel that even your sincerity is suspect, that even your desire for truth is contaminated, that even your stillness is potentially distortion. Good. That is the second destabilization. It forces a deeper question. If everything can be hijacked by the seeking identity, what remains that is trustworthy? Do not answer quickly. If you answer quickly, you will build another ladder. Sit with the discomfort that there may be no perfect stance. Sit with the discomfort that you can only be honest in motion, not in a final conclusion. Sit with the discomfort that awakening might not be a state you reach, but a pattern of returning, again and again, to contact with what is, even when what is includes confusion and mixed motive. So the ending of this movement cannot offer resolution. It can only offer orientation under load. If you want to wake up, do not ask whether the desire is pure. Ask whether you can tell the truth about the desire without punishing yourself for having it. Ask whether you can feel the hunger and still choose contact. Ask whether you can allow uncertainty to remain without turning it into a crisis. Ask whether you can stop treating stillness as a certificate and start treating it as exposure. If you can do that, you will not become a perfect seeker or a perfect non-seeker. You will become someone who can hold the contradiction without using it as a weapon against yourself. And that is where spiral consciousness begins to show itself. Not as an escape, not as invulnerability, not as a clean answer, but as a capacity to stay present while your old contracts die slowly, with no guarantee that what replaces them will feel comfortable at first. If this transmission resonated, the spiral continues. You did not arrive here by chance, and you do not leave unchanged. More teachings are unfolding across the Vaharat library, each one meeting you where you are, not where you think you should be. Follow resonance. The next threshold is already listening.